Okay, well, I guess the one item
I,
is that we don't have in front of us is the engine four and rescue one from last year, which was then at 650. This year it's at 685.
do you want? He said he just texted me and said if I give him the information, he can, join while driving. So, I can do that if you want to ask him that question.
Sure. What's
And
because we have nothing in front of us, Katie, for 22. What we have from Trish is everything beyond 22. So we were kind of surmising that the stuff, the 1,045,000 that wasn't funded last
oh,
year, was some of the stuff he was going to regurgitate this year for 22. And in case that is that engine rescue four and rescue one and engine four, those two vehicles are being replaced by one. And last year was for 650. He's got it in for 685 this year, which makes sense. I have all. I think we all. If everyone kept. Deputy Chief Ballinger had given us all this documentation on all this stuff, so we have it with pictures. But there was a lot of money that was obviously couldn't be funded, and I'm sure a lot of that's being brought back. And that's in this case that's the case with the 685,000 request for those two vehicles being
well, yeah,
replaced.
he could definitely answer that better. I just sent him the meeting ID and the passcode, so he can answer that. But I think there may be a difference with the request that came in last year, because Deputy Belanger may have had different priorities. He may have seen things differently than Chief McDonald does. I mean, that's common with transitions. So he could definitely answer that better, and hopefully he'll be joining in since I gave him
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's the same request. It's just 35,000 more this year than it was last year.
Oh, and he can speak to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we have all the documentation. I mean, it was pretty much justified. We're replacing two of those vehicles with one new one. So two off the road, one coming back. And the only difference is it's 35,000 more this year than it was last year when Chief Ballinger, Deputy Chief Ballinger presented it.
Right.
And then there was another request to do similar, to take two vehicles off the road for 68,000, replace it with an F-350. And that was Rescue 3 and P1. I think it's Pumper 1. And then there were some hoses that weren't, and an airbag and a CPR unit for the ambulance number 3. I guess 1 and 2 have them, 3 doesn't. That whole thing with the renovation at North Station for 250,000 totaled unfunded 1,045,000. And of course, this 650 last year, 685 this year was more than half of that.
Yeah.
It all makes perfect sense. So I don't think those priorities have really changed, but the price has gone up a little bit.
Yeah,
Maybe
that
there's some.
that happens for sure. Every
Yeah,
year things go up.
yeah, yeah. But other than that, it's the same document. I'm sure it's the same documentation to support it that we got last year. Okay.
The chief's here.
Is he here? Yeah, there we go. I see his name. Can he hear? Can he hear? Well, Chief.
I can. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right,
So
excellent.
we were just kind of going over what the requests are for 22. We have all the requests beyond 22. Trish provided us that we hadn't gotten anything for 22 physically, little oversight, but we were guessing that of the 1,045,000 that was presented by Deputy Chief Ballinger last year that was not funded, some of that would be presented tonight. And in this case, Engine 4 and Rescue 1, which was presented last year, which we have documentation on and the justification for, was 650. And this year, the only change is it's now for 685, 35,000 more. If you want to speak to that, anything and any other additional items for this year, for 2022, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the increase in that from 650 to 635 is due to a couple of factors. First and foremost, there is typically an increase in percentage-wise from year to year for the manufacturers. Some of that is due to cost of living increases, and then the other part of it is to the steel tariffs that have been imposed once, with the current administration. So Another part of it is in combining the two vehicles into one as a rescue pumper. There's some extra equipment items that we identified that we're going to need. And so that's what factored into the $35,000 increase for those two vehicles.
But the justification to take two vehicles off the road from a maintenance standpoint and going forward and everything, it all made sense last year, and the documentation was there that Deputy Chief Ballinger presented. So you're still concurring with that you're going to replace two vehicles for this one vehicle that'll serve the purpose of both, correct?
That's correct. In the current configuration, when we go out on a call using the rescue truck, we have to have a suppression apparatus, and that means we have to split 4 people between 2 different pieces of equipment. If we combine them into one, we're consolidating, we're getting a bigger bang for our buck, and we have the suppression apparatus and the rescue equipment all in one piece of equipment.
And you can then focus your manpower as opposed to spreading it on one vehicle, like you just said. That's great.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so that's the one item. Is what other items did you have for 22? Because we don't have them in front of us. I know you're going to be speaking from remembering here off the cuff, so to speak. But go ahead.
Right. I don't believe I had anything else. There was other items I know that had been put forward by Deputy Chief Belanger, but in looking at what we need to spend and whatnot, and what we've been able to accomplish through other means already in the past year, I think that we settled on the 2 biggest things being the capital replacement of combining the 2 vehicles into one. So I don't think there is anything else that I recall for fiscal year 22.
If you got a minute, I'll just go through what wasn't funded last year other than what we just talked about. There was $250 to renovate North Station, $250,000. There was also a request for Rescue 3 and Pumper 1 for $68,000, again, to replace those 2 vehicles with an F-350. And then there was some fire hose and nozzle replacement for $23,000. And then there was a new airbag rescue kit for $40,000. And then there was the purchase of a new Lucas 3 CPR device for $14,000 for ambulance 3, because I guess ambulance 1 and 2 have that equipment and 3 didn't. Is there anything I just said that jogs your memory that you were able to accomplish without a capital request, or things that I mentioned that you want to entertain going forward of what we haven't talked about?
Yes, it does. And thank you for going over that. So the Station 2 renovations, we've accomplished a great deal of that within the last year. We did some of that through some money that we already had for maintenance, for repair of the facility. So we replaced windows and flooring. The other piece of it, the bigger capital piece, actually falls under facilities. And so Mike Lupus has added that into his budget, and it's taken off of ours. So the Station 2 stuff is covered. The other items, the airbags, we're looking to incorporate that into the cost of buying the vehicle. So that's part of that extra equipment that factors into that price increase for the equipment. So it's when we buy the truck, we intend to buy that equipment with the truck. And then in terms of Rescue 3, we've reevaluated that position. That goes down to our most recent capital, our vehicle purchases for the 2 command vehicles. Paramedic 1 ended up becoming Car 2, and that is the Deputy Chief's vehicle. And then my replacement vehicle, which we took delivery of today, and in 2 weeks we'll be getting the other vehicle. So the rescue pumper is the only capital purchase that refreshed my memory. So that's really all we have on the docket for this coming fiscal year.
The only question I would have is on the Lucas CPR device. I know that out of every 4 calls, 3 are ambulance calls. If that's still the case, at least it was. That $14,000, is that ambulance 3 still in need of that $14,000 apparatus so that all 3 are equipped identically?
Well, it's something that we definitely could use. In looking at our capital outlay, when we were looking at this particular year coming up, we are going to have an ambulance that we're going to need to replace in fiscal year 23, I believe it is. So
okay.
We look to put that off a year and incorporate that into the cost of purchasing the ambulance. I mean, if the funding's there, we wouldn't mind going forward with that.
Sure, but
if that's something that you want to, but we could.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
or you're going to incorporate it like you did with the airbag rescue kit with the vehicle you're talking about, the 685. So you would meld that in
Yeah.
that apparatus into the new purchase with the ambulance receipts. That would make sense. Okay, so you're going to forego that another year with that ambulance replacement.
Yes,
So
I think
that
that's
would
something we,
just leave hoses and nozzles. I know that was another thing that was on there. For it's 23,000. How you doing on equipment as far as fire suppression?
well, some of that project was more along the lines of standardizing equipment across all three vehicles and, in terms of color coding and whatnot. So on the scale of things in priority, that's really not something that we really have to place high priority on, especially, in buying the new vehicle and everything. We're going to be actually moving down, we're getting rid of one apparatus, so we could evaluate that when it comes in. So I think in terms of my satisfaction with the equipment, I think we're pretty well suited right now, and that's not a real high priority. I think there's other things the town might need to use that $23,000 for,
Sure.
and we can get by with what we have.
Good. Well, you're talking about replacement, so you're going to take some of the equipment off one of the two vehicles when you incorporate it into a vehicle. I got it. That
Yep.
makes sense. Well, that's very good. Anything else you want to share with us tonight, Chief?
No, just to say thank you for all the support. Like I said, I just took delivery of the new Tahoe today, and we traded in the old P1, the 2004 Tahoe, and we'll be getting the second one in about 2 weeks. So we really appreciate all the support that we've gotten, and going forward, and everything that you do as a committee and a group, and what you do for us.
All right, well, thank you. We appreciate what you do for us. So, all right, good. Well, I'm glad that's the only item that we have going forward for 22 to consider is the purchase.
If I can
of those-
interject,
Sure, go ahead.
because no one has anything in front of them, including the chief, I'm sure, but I printed out something before I went home tonight. And I do see for fiscal 22, there was a request for car 3 replacement, $78,000.
Right, that's the pickup truck, and we decided to defer that.
Oh, okay.
Because that truck is, we have car 10, which is the fire inspector's vehicle, which plows snow. We can get by with the current pickup truck for right now, and we look to put that off for another fiscal year because of this replacement apparatus. It's quite a big chunk of money, even replacing 2 vehicles, but we're still doing it at $685,000 because they're just getting so pricey, that we can get by with the 2 Tahoes and car 10.
Okay,
And
so-
we'll use Rescue 3 another year. Yep.
Oh, that's
Okay, so
good.
this isn't going to be in the request any longer. I need to know that too, of course, when I'm putting everything together. So,
Right. Yeah, they're going to move that off to another fiscal year.
okay.
I'm
Good.
not sure which one I put it in for. I think I want to say it's 25 because 24 is the ambulance, or it could be 24 has both the ambulance and that one. But I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I think it
what I
was.
have in front of me shows 22. So let me see. Okay, should be 24. Looks like, no, 24 has the ambulance.
Ambulance.
25 has Tower 1. 26 has water tender 1.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Or maybe I did include it, and I'm just not. I'd have to go back and look at my paperwork, and I'm very.
That's okay.
That's
Okay.
all right.
I'm just putting it, I have it in front of me, what you had sent, and that's what I printed out. It says 22. Did you want it
So
to
I
be
ha-
considered 22?
Yes, if I did include that in the most recent documents, then that's what the intent was. So,
Okay.
yeah, I may have it confused with the forestry truck, Forestry 2. That's probably what I'm confusing it with.
Okay, and I don't see Forestry 2 in here at all, so, okay.
There was some discussion, Chief, about the forestry truck, whether or not it was still a viable piece of equipment to be used or not. Is that still, what's your thought on that? That was just going to go away at some point, period.
Yeah, well, I think we pushed it out for replacement later on because we do have the newer Forestry 1's the newer vehicle.
Okay.
Forestry 2 is a suitable vehicle. It's got a pump and tank on it. It's more plays a support role,
Sure.
whereas the smaller vehicle and the UTV can get in and directly attack force. That one, I believe we pushed off beyond 20 latest change. So I apologize that I mixed up with Rescue 3.
Okay. So the 78 would still be on for 22 then. So it'd be the 685 and the 78. The only thing
That
I
is
noted, looking at your future, it looks like we bought some time with that $150,000 on the rehab for the tower one, because you're looking to replace it here, $1.5 million at some point in fiscal 25. So we bought
Right.
some years. That 150,000 bought us like about 4 or 5 years, basically, from what I'm reading.
Right. Yes. That's correct.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of the chief? Chief, if there's anything else you want to add? I know you're driving. So,
Yeah. No,
Thank you.
I'm good. And I just really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm sorry about being late.
that's all right. Anybody have any questions of the chief before we let him go? We can't take a vote because we don't have a quorum, but we did get some information, and I appreciate that, chief. That does shed some light on what we're looking at here when we can take a vote.
All right. Very good,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
You
You
do the
too.
same. Thanks again. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, is anybody, we can't take a vote on the meeting minutes because we don't have them in front of us. I see Trish adjusted the agenda. There's no other business that we can talk about. The next meeting is the 2nd, and that's going to be town and DPW. So that's going to be, in the meantime, I will reach out to Mr. Rowe and see what we can do about adding to the Finance Committee. And I apologize, we're missing a member. That's all we needed.
Not your fault.
And no, but we'll go forward. So we call the meeting to an end. Not that we had a meeting. I couldn't call one to order because we didn't have a meeting to call to order.
Right.
But we got good content, so that's
That's
Yeah,
good.
and I think a lot of that stuff is there. There are a lot of pictures and documentation that Deputy Chief Ballinger had given us last year, and pictures of the North Station that he said he's been able to retrofit, and it's going to be in the facilities budget, not in his budget, but the documentation's all there if we pull it out. That's what I was doing when I didn't see anything for 22. I went back to 21 and said, it's got to be somewhere. That was a good guess, Joan, right?
Good. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Call it a night.
Have a good night.
Stay
Happy
safe.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
One, two
Stay
weeks.
safe.